dark and smelly and stinky and cold.
That sounds like where we are now.
What are we supposed to make in
So, right after the war in 1945, World War II, there was a short time period where the Russians allowed the Polish to go back to Poland, if they were Polish. And some of the Chabad Hasidim were very involved in forging documents, forging papers, and they helped get thousands of Hasidim out of this horrible place that they were in Russia that didn't allow Yidden to celebrate Yiddishkeit. Although there was, of course, underground Yiddishkeit, and the Friedrich Rebbe and all the Rebbeim prior did everything they could to make sure that there were Chadorim and Mikvois and Yeshivas and everything else set up. Now, there happens to be a balabas that comes to shul every single day in my shul. His name is Ilya Bliner, and his father got the money to help pay for the forgers to forge these documents that helped over 1,000 Chassidim get out of Russia in those times. Now, once the government found out, all the people that were involved, including Ilya Bliner's father, were sent away for, he was in jail for some 10 years or something, and some of them were killed, but the whole game, the whole scam that they were running stuck. And for 20 years, all the Yidden that were in Russia were stuck and locked in. So if their family members got out, they were stuck in, and they didn't see their family members for over 20 years. That's pretty sad, right? Kinderlach, how many of you are 20 years old? None of you. So imagine for a whole lifetime, including, by the way, this Yid, this balabas who comes to shul, he did not see his father while he was growing up. And his mother was always running from place to place. He said, I felt like an orphan. You can't imagine what they lived through. The Rebbe said, Rabbi Binyamin Katz, who had a photographic memory, he was only 25 years old, in 1965, a few years before the Yidden started getting out a little bit, not till many years later, till the late 80s and early 90s did they get out in mass, but they were able to get out a little bit after 1965 and towards the end of the 60s. But Rabbi Binyamin Klein, who was a young man at the time, he had a photographic memory. So the Rebbe handpicked him to go to meet the Jews in Russia, to share with them words of the Rebbe and words and messages from their families, and also to remember what they would say, and they would tell messages that they wanted to send out to their families, because every phone call was monitored, every letter was checked, you couldn't send packages. They were literally locked up like in a massive prison. So when Rabbi Binyamin Katz was there, he was meeting with a couple like the second night he was there, and it was in the evening, he left, and as he's walking in a dark street, two men grabbed a hold of his arms and schlepped him into a dark alley. And he thought that was it, he's done.
Oh my God.
He thought he was done for, he thought it was the KGB. But he heard their voices, and he recognized the voice that was similar to Rabbi Mochkin, the father, the elder Rabbi Mochkin, Rabbi Peretz Mochkin, and some of the younger brothers of Mula, and can't remember the other one, who already got out. So he recognized one as Mochkin, and he found out later that the other one was Vyshevsky. And they told him, they said, don't worry, you don't have to be nervous. They started speaking to him in Yiddish, and his heart rate went back down after it was beating very, very rapidly. I shouldn't have done that. Maybe break the microphone. His heartbeat he thought it was over. Anyway, they told him, tell us what's going on. Does anyone outside of Russia, does anyone in America think about us, that we're stuck here? And he says, I can't speak for everyone, but I know for a fact that the Lubavitcher Rebbe always talks about you and thinks about you. And in fact, Shavuos, less than a year prior, in 1964, the Rebbe said we have to make a l'chaim for those that are stuck behind the Iron Curtain, and we have to think about them. Machshava Mayelis, if we think about them, they will recognize that we think about them, and they will feel inspired, and they will have the courage to stay strong. And actually, years later, when they got out, they related, and it was written in books, how they had so much courage by just the fact that they were thought about. Very, very important to think about. And it was mentioned that the hostages now that are being held in Gaza, we think about them. We say l'chaim for them. This is also something that could bring them inspiration, as we've seen videos and clips of soldiers. They say, thank you for davening for us. Thank you for saying Tehillim for us. So now back to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was sitting in Tsar's prison, and I don't know if you know the term death row. If anyone is going to be put to death by the government, they go in a holding place, in a holding cell, and that area is called death row. All those inmates are going to be put to death for the crimes that they did. Of course, the Alter Rebbe was picked up by the black wagon, and her all natural way of thinking would be that this would be the end. This is what was going to happen. And obviously the Chassidim were completely distraught. And we know the stories of the Alter Rebbe meeting with the Maggid and with the Baal Shem Tov in jail. Why am I here? And it's to spread, and from here on in we're going to spread out Chassidus and everything else. Everything's going to turn out fine. There's also a famous story of the minister that came to visit the Alter Rebbe. You guys know the story, Ayeka?
Yeah.
Okay. So the minister says, what does Ayeka mean? And the Alter Rebbe tells him it's Hashem asking, where are you holding in life when a person of so-and-so, so many years. Maybe you don't know the second part to the story. The story continues. Maybe you do know it. The minister would come back regularly once he realized that the Alter Rebbe was not just another inmate, and not just, there were many Jews and Rabbanim and people that were caught up in the web of the Tsar's, regime. And he had come across other special individuals, Rabbanim, but here he realized he was dealing with the Heilig Tzaddik, somebody who saw right through him, and he was enamored by this, and he would go and speak with him, and at one point he says to the Alter Rebbe, how can I help you? Obviously without getting myself into trouble, but I want to be able to help you. I'm even willing to take a little bit of a risk. So the Alter Rebbe said to him, I want you to let my Chassidim and my family know that I'm still alive. You guys know this part of the story? So, proof of life. So he said, okay, but how am I going to find them? How am I going to reach them without compromising my position? So the Alter Rebbe says, my brother-in-law, Yisrael Kozik, came, and he's probably still walking around right outside the prison with the hopes that he can figure out ways to get me out. And this is the way he's dressed. He has a Russian hat that looks a little different than the way they dress here. He's wearing a Russian long black coat and a funny Russian hat. He describes him how he looks. And he said, okay, he's going to go on a mission. And he went around secretly looking, and he picked him out right away because he was only a few blocks away from the prison. And what he did was, secretly, he motioned to him to follow him. So Yisrael realized something's going on. He doesn't know what either. He said, but if he was going to be in big trouble, they would come right up to his face and say, follow me. The way the guy was motioning to him in a secret way, he knew he better go. He follows him, and he walks all the way. The minister takes him to his own home, and he motions him to wait outside. Meanwhile, while Yisrael's walking, some of the other Chassidim see something, and they start following along. Just a couple, so maybe 3. The minister goes inside, everything's quiet, they wait a little bit away, but they're watching the house, and they see a melon, like a cantaloupe, comes out the window, like gets dropped out the window. Cantaloupe out the window, it wasn't thrown at them. They see it gets dropped out the window on the side of the bushes. So they're thinking, that must be for us. They go over to it, and they see it was manipulated. It was opened before already. So they take it, they open it. Well, first they go away to the side somewhere by the bushes. They huddle together so no one should see. They open it up, and they pull out a note, a handwritten note, and they recognize the Alter Rebbe's handwriting. And on that note is written, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And with that, they knew that the Alter Rebbe was still alive and was sending them a message. And it's interesting because there was a there was a young man who was, his wife and 2 daughters were never kidnapped by these Hamas terrorists, Yimach Shemam. And on November 8th, I believe, not long ago, he spoke before the UN Parliament, and he gave some inspiring words of passion and how his family was taken. And at the end, he's not a from Yid. He stood up, he put one hand on his heart and one hand on his head, because he wasn't wearing a yarmulke, and he screamed, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And just before Yutes Kislev, his wife and his daughters came out of Gaza. And in Mirz Hashem, we have some of the elder Chassidim, the way they talk about the Tkufa of Yutes and Chav Kislev, they say, Far Peterburg or Nochem Peterburg. There was clearly a distinction between the approach, even though the Alter Rebbe already was spreading Chassidus, but the shturim and the way it was done was, as we say, it was now off the charts. Everywhere the Alter Rebbe was getting the Chassidim to spread it out, based on instructions of the Baal Shem Tov, to spread out to Sheifutzim and Esecha Chutzah, that the Chassidus should be spread out throughout the entire world. Before Peterburg, it was done in such a way, there was a lot of snagdus and all the attacks. Afterwards, there was just Ufaratzna. It went everywhere. And in Mirz Hashem, just like we had then, we'll have now, where we're davening it for the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, and even here, that we're in Golos. And we are also hostages. We're also in prison. How are we held hostage? Our neshama is held by the Yetzer Hara. We started learning yesterday the Sharblat of Tanya, and the pasuk Kikarev Elecha Hadavar Moed B'ficha Uvevavcha La'asoisoi. If you want to listen to Farbrengen, and you want to learn a Mishnah every day, think, I can't do that. It's impossible. I can't sit still. I'm too jumpy. I have no sitzfleisch. You could do it. And the Alter Rebbe will show you how. Kindela, the Alter Rebbe will show you how in the Tanya. We'll explain exactly how to release our neshama from captivity of the Yetzer Hara. And so we have the power. It's very close. It's very near to our hearts, to our mouths, that we could do it. And we just have to do it. Good Yom Tov, everybody. Good Yom Tov.